This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we're right at 3:01 here in the Northeast. Welcome, everybody. We've got about 83 people signed up for today. We had about 130 some last week, so we're very excited you're all interested in engaging with the Alliance for Massage Therapy Education. We just lost our screen, Pete. So
Okay.
I'm Virginia Cowan. I'm the board liaison for the Teacher Research Development Committee. And we've got Pete Whitridge, who is our committee chair, Susan Beck, Rob Kelly, and Arlene Hassler. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Arlene. And our format today is going to be a little bit different, but we're really trying to reach out and support massage therapy educators, massage and bodywork educators, I should say, through everything that's going on in our current COVID universe. And so we do have a little slide deck that's got the agenda I'm supposed to follow. And Pete, I see nothing.
Yeah, it's
So
gotten
can you share
lost.
your screen again?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It got lost.
Okay, patience, folks. One sec. Let's see if I can at least. So apologies for the technological difficulties. So just to recap, for those of you who were with us last week, a couple of us from the board of directors jumped in to start a just a dialogue with folks to figure out how we can support you in terms of moving to online teaching. If you received the link to the video for last week's replay, there was a link in there to fill out a survey. And so if you would kindly fill out the survey so that we can have better ideas on how to help you. Last week, we're going to go over some ground rules here in just a moment. But last week we really had a lot of chat in the chat box, and we'll talk about how to be. I guess we're just trying to figure out ways to more easily share resources with you all, so that we can have everybody feel supported through here. So still looking for Pete's screen here.
Okay,
And
I'm so sorry.
yeah, no worries. Pop into here.
Here it is.
I think if you just hit share my
Yeah,
screen.
I got it.
There we go. Okay.
It
All
was
right.
just
So the slide I'm looking for is the next slide. So not this one, but the one after that. Okay. So nope, go back up one. There we go. So hopefully you've joined by computer or by phone, not by both. We will have, because we have now 50 people on here, which is super exciting to have 50 massage and bodywork educators all together. Exciting, exciting. But we will have some ground rules for these e-meetings, so we can be mindful of your time and make sure that from my perspective, engage you as much as possible. So I'm going to talk at you for a couple seconds about some ground rules, and then we'll go from there. So Pete, can you give me one more slide forward? Just advance one. Great. So we're trying to maximize attendance. Generally, we don't have a need to have so many people together at one time. So we do kind of max out the GoToMeeting. This is a meeting format. It's not so easy to engage people kind of back and forth with questions. So if you're on the phone, we'll try and figure out a way to connect with you. For those of you who aren't wearing a headset, it's a very good idea to wear one. You will learn this when you're working online with your students. There's a lot of feedback if the microphone and the speaker engage with each other. So, put something, put something over your ears, at least the speakers. We're going to try and curate the conversation. And so what I'm going to ask you to do, and we talked about this as a committee, and again, I'm the board liaison, but nonetheless, try not to overwhelm the chat. We tried to copy out resources from last week's chat, and people were throwing materials out there, and we have a lot of that already in the resource directory. We're just trying to find a way to get that to you. When you do speak, when you raise your hand or however we speak with you, please pause so we can be sure you're unmuted, and please be succinct. I'm generally not, but please be succinct, and please mute yourself when you're finished speaking so we don't have to listen to the background noise. And then Pete, if you can give me the next slide. So those are our ground rules, and I know I'm talking fast, but so last week's webinar recording is available. We put out some ideas for you, just real basic things for you to think about. The Alliance is working on ways to organize information and resources. I can't stress this enough. There are other organizations much larger than ours that are just now getting information pages up and running. We have one dedicated staff member, that's it, and everybody else here is a volunteer. So as you have materials to share, please just hang on to them. There's a lot going on Facebook. A lot of people are throwing ideas out there. If you're already overwhelmed, you're going to be more overwhelmed in that environment. So again, fill out the survey. And just a reminder, if you have massage therapy practice related questions, please reach out to your professional associations, AMTA, ABMP, FSMTA, your state boards, gathering people together in your states for practice related questions, teaching related questions. That's what we're here for. That's what we do. Our board president has reached out to the other organizations just to find out how we can do what we do best and support them in what they do best. And so that entree went out a couple of days ago, and we're waiting to hear back from them. So that's all I got. I'll be back to see you all later at the end of the presentation. So I'm going to turn it back over to Pete.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'm going to keep my camera off for a second from me. But I also want to just thank everyone who is here, Virginia, Rob Kelly, Susan Beck, Arlene Hessler. We were meeting the other day and felt like the presentation that we worked on last week needed to be continued. And we're hoping that you all will want to continue to do this as well. I want to have an open dialogue and give people the opportunity to share and ask questions. That's really where we're going. I'm going to unmute everybody at the moment so everyone can say hi, because I know you're all teachers, you all want to say something. So you ready? Say hi.
Hi.
Hi, Pete.
Hi.
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 Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey everyone.
Hi there.
All right, and some of you have your cameras on and some of you don't. So I am just going to mute everyone and then be sure that Rob and Susan can unmute themselves, and we can start to talk a little bit for what we're going to do today. Rob's is on, and Rob, I wanted you to give an opportunity to share what you're doing with your school at Irene's and go from there.
Okay. We are recording lectures onto obviously just up to the internet. We're going to put them up on YouTube and then have students watch, and then we're going to give a quiz for every segment that we do. Based on that, we have another teacher, Jeanette, who's here, who's going to do, we think, some hands-on stuff for the students and do like a Zoom type thing, and then they can ask questions and have someone do that, but just try and make it as interactive as possible, and also do some online just question and answer. Just, write in a question, send a question, do something like that, and just be able to explain class. So
great. And are you running into any issues at the moment? Are you starting to train the students in what you're doing? What are your expectations?
we have not done it. We've not opened it up yet. So we are probably going to open it up this week, early this week, and start to get them engaged with that. Just keeping them engaged is, obviously one of the things that is just a little difficult to do, but we're going to start up that this week. And so I will have more answers next week.
Okay, awesome. And Susan Beck, I want to turn it over to you a little bit. I'll give you the
Okay,
opportunity.
thank you. So my situation's a little bit different in that I am at the College of Technology at the Idaho State University. And so we're a land grant institution, and the College of Technology was the original institution which offered certificate and associate degrees. So we have the advantage of all of our classes are already on Moodle. So that's our learning management system at ISU. And we also have Google is our email server. So we also have access to Google Docs, which I think can be very valuable. But I think one of the challenges that some of you may be facing, and I'm pretty fortunate in that we have a help desk for not only our faculty, but also our students for online learning challenges, is that a lot of our learners, the reason they're in massage therapy is because they don't like computers. They don't like being online. They like to touch. They like to do things like that. So, that can be very, very challenging. And sometimes our instructors are the same way. It can be very challenging to bring them online. At our college, we have to have a teaching certificate from the state. So at age 60, I got my master's in training and development. And a lot of those classes were classes, some of them I had to take. And I don't know if I'd recommend going back to school at age 60. It's not very easy to do and work full time. I think I was working 60 or 70 hours a week at the time, because at colleges and universities, they think one person should be able to teach all the classes that are hands-on classes. One of the things I would really recommend that you do is have some kind of an online training seminar before you have your classes with your students, and that may end up being a little bit more individual. One of the things we did, even though our students are pretty tech savvy, is I sent out a Google Live form. And it's sort of like a survey form that you can build on Google Docs. And I asked each one of them if they had access to a computer, if their computer had a microphone, and if it had sound. Well, we all know that most computers are going to have microphones and sound, but I haven't gotten a lot of response back because we're on spring break. But I have one student who said they didn't have a microphone or sound on their computer. So that will identify that learner, so I can approach them ahead of time when classes start back up. The other thing that I think was really beneficial in our case is our university shut down with no notice on a Friday night. At 6:15, the president made the announcement. And we kind of knew it was probably coming, but we thought, geez, we only have one more week before spring break, and wouldn't it be really nice? There's no identified cases in Eastern Idaho. There weren't at that time. But we were just hoping we were going to get one more weekend so we could get our learners prepared. But that wasn't the case. So whatever you do, you need to have faculty buy-in. And you may have faculty that aren't very good on online learning, and you may have to have a crash course. So we were given an extra week before spring break. Our students have an extended spring break for 2 weeks, and that week was given to us for preparation, to pull together and decide what our game approach is. Now, I think one of the things that's important to look at is your state law and the educational requirements in your state law. Is that something that you still need to address and take care of? And our state law requires 110 hours of clinical work that's supervised by an instructor. And when our faculty met, which is 1.5, and then we rely on adjunct faculty as well, and guest speakers. So at that time,
All right,
we
so Susan,
had a meeting.
part of what I want to do.
let me finish this one little piece up. We had a meeting and we made a decision. That all of our faculty was not in agreement that we could teach online skills. So we're going to do the didactic piece and hopefully hope for the best that we'll be able to bring them in for the labs later. So one other thing, just make sure you have regular, I would suggest having your class hours the same as what they've been, and have office hours posted where you're available to be on the phone or meet online. And that's it, Pete.
Okay, awesome, Susan. And I'm sorry, I understand some of you are seeing some bad chat, some bad audio. I imagine where there's lots of people on the line that is one of the big issues. I'm trying to maintain myself under mute as well. Arlene, I believe you are out there, and there are probably some questions on the chat box. I wanted to check in and see if there's anything you'd like to present up to us.
Okay, so far there was a couple questions, and I think that we'll address them as we go on. Judy Collins is just trying to figure out how we'll technique sessions online.
I can't hear you, Arlene. Arlene, I have a bad.
Okay, so there's a big echo.
Bad connection with you.
Okay, so there's a big echo. So, can you hear me now? Oh man.
I can hear.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Just say yes in the chat. Is it still echoing? Okay, cool. Okay, I have them written down. There's still more coming in. But the first question was about trying to teach technique online, and what suggestions were for that. And then somebody else wanted to know if Rob's program was CompTIA certified. And then I'll have to go back up to the oh yeah, Florida Board of Massage Therapy. There's an emergency call on Friday to discuss an emergency order for what can be taught online and what must be taught in person. That's Florida Board of Massage. Let's see, I think that's it so far. Okay, I'm gonna mute myself again. If I got any of that wrong, let me know in the chat.
Okay. So Susan or Rob, did you hear some of those questions? Would you like to address either some of them? And then I can speak directly to something that's happened at the Board of Massage in Florida, and that may help some of you as well. And of course, we're trying to just work with what we have here. And this is a large group. And so we hope that you know that we'll keep doing this and keep refining as we go.
So I will address that. We've chosen to not teach skills online, just the ethics, the ethics of the other instructor and I. We felt it was best practice not to, and it didn't meet our state law. And we are CompTIA, and you do need to file an interim plan on the EDVERA if you are a CompTIA school, and what your interim plan is.
We are not CompTIA. Jeanette, can you tell me what we are accredited through?
We're accredited through ASSET.
That's it. Okay. So I think Kathy is in contact with them to figure out what we have to do, and I think I heard her say they may adjust things based on the situation. It's just as a new situation we've never dealt with before, so it's just is a whole new world. So I think we're gonna have to figure this out as we go.
Okay, and those of you who are on the call who live in Florida, you know that I stay abreast of what's happening in Florida. I did talk to Ian McIntosh. The board did create some emergency rules regarding what types of classes can be taught as a distance learning or online learning, depending on how you call what you're doing. Some of it could be synchronous, some of it could be asynchronous. Mostly it is things that are didactic, sciences, some of the ethics classes, professional ethics, business, a variety of things that might be lecture oriented towards body work. I've seen a variety of questions around how do we teach online massage and all of those things. I have no answer for that. And I really hope that as a group, we can start to have some a positive effect on what we like to see as an outcome from that. I know that Sandy Fritz is on the line, and I think that she might be able to unmute herself and share a little bit about what her thoughts might be on that. I'm not just picking on anyone. I want to give Sandy a chance to just chime in here because I've seen things that she's doing and it might be helpful.
Yeah, I've taught a blended class for a long time.
Your sound is terrible though, Sandy.
Yeah, Pete, I think if you mute, it helps. Is that better, everybody? Something about having two mics open at the same time. I have been teaching a blended class for a long time. So my decision has been to front load the type of material that Pete just mentioned, the didactic type of material. And we have already been preparing some level of lecture and demonstration using a YouTube channel like Rob suggested. I think that there's refinement that can be done that way, but I am not really, I don't think that initial skill sets as far as hands-on is concerned. We just need to remember that about half, in my opinion, about half of a ELAP/CompTIA-based curriculum requirement can probably be adapted to online. And I also want to remind everybody to use resources that are already done for you. And it's no secret that I write textbooks, but the publisher and the publishers for the other textbooks, like Books of Discovery, for example, they have a ton of stuff already done for you. And Elsevier has access to a learning management platform where you don't have to get confused about what's going on with stuff. So keep it simple.
Excellent. Thank you, Sandy. Joe Lubau, I think you're on the line. I wanted you to, as a school owner, share with us maybe what you're doing a little bit. And then I know there's a variety of people out there who have direct questions, and I want to be able to get those to you as well. So, Joe, if you can unmute yourself.
Okay. Thank you, Pete. Florida has some interesting rules. The Board of Massage allowed schools to do some of the didactic stuff online, but they actually only determined that you have to complete the minimum number of hours in each type of course online, which opened the idea that if you had a 300-hour massage class, as long as you did 150 of it in the classroom, you met the requirement. But the state licensing board for schools, and this is probably going to be similar to the rest of the country, the state licensing board for schools is allowing all post-secondary schools only to do theory and didactic online. So if you're in Florida, you've got to pay attention to both the licensing agency, CIE, and the Board of Massage. The Board of Massage tells you which particular courses can be done online, and the CIE tells you that everything has to be didactic. We have existing slideshows like most of you have. We have resources from the publishers. We're using Zoom. I assume lots of you have the same thing. We managed in a week to get approvals from everybody, right? There's the Board of Massage, there's the state licensing board, there's accrediting agencies, the U.S. Department of Ed is allowing it. It's been pretty amazing how everybody's stepped up. And I'm gonna stop in half a second. I know sometimes the associations get some flack and people are saying, where's the AMTA for the professionals, for the therapists? And I don't know, and maybe they're screwing up, and maybe it's just been a really tough week and we all have a lot to do. So just thought I'd put that out there.
Okay, Joe, thank you. And one of the things that I think is helpful is, Arlene, I think there may be a question or two that might come up, and if you would tell us the name of the person and we'll allow them to unmute.
I'm looking at it. Yeah, I mean, it's still a lot of, Judy wants to know about teaching techniques sorry, I can't talk today. Synchronously online. Illinois is not allowing hands-on work to be done online. And looking for possibly outreach. Then there is also the access issue, which is a big issue in all of education and public libraries. Virginia brought this up, closing. It's also an issue in academic libraries. With everything closing, there's many families and students that don't have access to internet or computers. You know, they may only have a smartphone if they even have that. So there's access issues. Let's see. I think that's really it. Oh, somebody suggested that there's some hotspots. There's places providing hotspots, but then if we're telling people to stay home, you know, how can they go out to access hotspots? So I don't know. Guys, let me know where I'm at with that.
Okay, and so it sounds to me like one of the big issues is going to be how we are going to deal with hands-on issues. I think that would be an important thing to start to think about as a group. That may be some topics and things that we could think about for another conversation. The committee is very committed to having resources for you, but we want to put them in a centralized location that can be helpful. At some point, Virginia had asked to have some resources and maybe even some future volunteers to be on the panel to give us some examples of that. So I want to let you know that this is going to be ongoing. I'm interested in, from any of you, did you have troubles this week? Have you been on break and so you're planning for your thing to come up this week or next week? I will tell you personally, I am going to be teaching synchronously with the Asheville School of Massage and Yoga, my business classes, and I have modified that tremendously and hope the process will go smoothly. One of the things that Susan Beck talked about a lot in a different video or a different webinar was assessments. I think that was a big issue. So please be sure to think about, you know, how we would assess if we were going to do that. I also thought that I saw someone named Tracy Walton on the line, and she teaches tremendously asynchronously and synchronously. And so if Tracy has anything she'd like to add at the moment, that would be great. And I'm going to just open it up for that. Tracy still on the line? Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I was
That's
double
okay.
muted. Yeah, I didn't have anything prepared about that, but what I've mostly been teaching online are advanced skills in you know, clinical thinking and online marketing for massage therapists and such. And when I haven't stepped into the realm yet of teaching basic or advanced hands-on skills. So I wish I had. I've done a lot of teacher training, you know, where my students were my growing teaching staff, and they had to also teach the didactic portions of our classes and go through the slides and handle questions and deal with classroom management. We were able to be an unruly classroom even as we listened, but not the exact, you know, the precise skills that you're talking about here.
Okay, great. And so as part of the process here, I think that would be something to think about. Some of our schools may be shut down for 4, 6, 8 months potentially. Another thing to think about is, have some of you actually had an enrollment that you've canceled? Maybe someone would like to unmute themselves and share if they've had a school cancellation, that they've canceled a class.
Pete,
We have
I'd also like to know if how many schools are in a progression in their program where they're just finishing up like we are. We're down to our last 6 weeks, which is almost all a hands-on. And I'm retiring. So, and they're closing our program at the university. So
we've had a class that we were going to start tomorrow that has been postponed. We have a class starting in April that will almost certainly be postponed. We've got a couple of groups that are going to finish up in the next month, or we're supposed to. I imagine that's pretty common. And we have no legal way to finish the training for the folks who are close to the end, because the state licensing board won't let us do practical classes online. And honestly, I'm not sure I'd want to give students our diploma who learned practical skills online. If there are other folks here who think there's a way to do that and feel good about it, I'd love to hear it, even though in Florida it's probably not going to be legally possible.
This is Sandy. Couple of things. My students use their smartphones for everything that they do. So not having a computer may not be as much of a detriment as you might think. They can access Canvas, they do the Zoom calls, all of that right through their smartphone. So just to kind of throw that out there. I have a class that's just finishing, and we are finishing up the last part of their final exam. They are recording it for me. They have to, with a family member at home, they're doing a massage. Now, I already know what their skill set is because I've been watching them for a year, but they're actually doing a recording and then giving me the access to that. I have a program halfway through. I lucked out on that because they have had quite a bit of hands-on skills right now, so I can get into the refinement, I think, a little bit by using some YouTube demos. I don't know how many of you remember, but I took on the job of being the massage coordinator for the Alliance of American Football, which is now defunct. But I had 8 massage therapy groups across the entire country. Again, they were already massage therapists, so there's a difference there. But I coordinated all of their training related to that through them sending me videos and looking at it and then working back and forth with that with some review on that. So it's just a matter of us settling in and settling down. The states are going to have to respond, and just realize that you just start with something very simple. Zoom is very simple, and just start having some conversations with your students that way and work it out as you go. Everybody is in the same boat. We don't have all the answers right now. It's just fine.
And that's great, Sandy. Thank you so much. And I'm seeing people on the chat box have shared that they have canceled. That's a very great place for you to do that, so we can keep a record of that. As I ask a question, I think that that's so valuable that we can keep that. I am interested as well if you've had some successes this week. I'm just going to leave it open so that if you want to press the mic and you want to come on, maybe someone who hasn't shared yet, have you had some successes that you were surprised by during this week? I'll mute.
Yeah, I can jump in for a minute. This is Steve Rogny from Zen Shiatsu. Last week we did, in the midst of it, everything was kind of shutting down. We had some classes in process that I was teaching, one where we did have some students joining by Zoom shortly before we closed everything down. And then after we closed everything down, we still had one introductory workshop on the calendar for like very, very entry level people. So I had the opportunity both to do some supervision of technique for very, very advanced students and also for completely beginning first class ever students. And I did find, I mean, this was Zoom, so I set them up for, at least minimal success in advance. Go ahead and, set up a video area and an area to work so that I can see you clearly. And, it's certainly not impossible. And I'm sure, of course, like everything in me is sort of thinking this technique online just isn't feasible. That's like the one thing we can't put online. But I did find that I had, substantial success, both refining the advanced students and for the beginning students being able to troubleshoot their basic mechanics and getting them to a comfortable, safe technique situation. So it just opened my thinking a little bit. And although I still think it's really a situation of last resort, I just want to broach the question as educators, because as we start looking at, we have contingency plans where we're not planning to teach hands-on until May 1st if need be, but what if we can't teach technique May 1st? I mean, what if social distancing is still, it's not responsible to start, hands-on classes May 1st? What if it's June 1st? What if it's July 1st? So, just thinking, I guess I'd recommend for everyone, see if you can set up for yourself an opportunity to try teaching someone some technique by Zoom and that kind of real-time synchronous method, just to organize your thoughts and get some experience in it, because we might ultimately have to advocate a bit with regulatory boards to see to what degree can we deliver some online, if maybe we still hope that the actual assessment for students happens after we can get together in person, but who knows.
Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate your contribution. If anyone else would like to unmute themselves, that would be great. Take a chance.
There's some good stuff in the chat.
Yes. I just wanted some of those folks who might be in the chat to see if they wanted to pop in.
I'm going to unmute myself again. We had so many applications this week that I'm getting them mixed up, so I've been looking and I can't find it, but I'm fairly certain that if you do federal financial aid, they're also only allowing theory classes to be done online unless you are already approved for distance learning for practical classes. So that's something else to keep in mind.
Great, Joe. Thank you. Anyone else?
I've got an idea that might help from the YouTube world, if anyone wants to hear that. All right. So my thoughts on how to teach technique via camera is that it helps to have not just you be demonstrating, but if you're able to have someone else in the room that you're teaching. So in other words, if you're a teacher, there's going to be 3 people in the room. It's going to be you, it's going to be someone that you're teaching, and it's going to be someone who's being demonstrated on. So if you can be putting your hands on someone else and showing them what they're doing and making corrections for them, that can be more valuable than just you working on someone else. And that's it.
Great, Ian. That's a great feedback. And one of the things that we want to do is create and be creative and hear ideas from people who haven't been necessarily old line teachers, and we want to be experimental. So I love to hear that. Thank you. Did anyone else want to unmute themselves and share a little bit about successes this week? No? Okay. How about what about needs for the short term and long term? Like, I think there is some lobbying that needs to happen, but we also need to help students who may be enrolled in our programs. How are you interacting with those students now? how are you helping them? For instance, I sent out my business letter to the students I expect to see on Monday at 9 o'clock for a synchronous class. And one of the ladies told me that she was stuck in a care facility at her job and may or may not be able to participate fully. So I have to kind of pay attention to, you know, just because I can deliver it doesn't mean someone can receive it. Anybody want to share in? Needs for the next few weeks.
Pete, I'll read since some people didn't share some of their comments, I mean, everybody has a chance to read them, but while we go on with that, like Sherry Aldrich shared that they're starting a new class and they've reached out to all of them and they're all on board with shifting the schedule so that everything is lecture based for the first month or so. Also sent them some gifts, some grease pens and colored pencils and stuff like that to help them. What else is there in here? Oh, somebody mentioned about the YouTube videos to be careful about publication. The students must have written releases on file in order to use it. So I'm assuming whoever's in the YouTube video, and this is true, you can also set those YouTube videos to be private. So when you're doing a YouTube video, most of you probably know this, but you can set them to be public or you can set them to be private when you put them on your channel. And then the only people that can access them are people that you give access to, like you can give them a link. That link can be shared. So there's different techniques for making those private. So that's my 2 cents for that. If anybody else has more.
Feel free to mute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Hey there, it's Virginia again. One of the things that we talked about last week, for those of you who have not really started to do video interaction live with your students, do remember that a lot of school children, K-12, are going back to school and will be online starting on Monday morning at 9 o'clock. So if your students have the family computer or if they don't have great Wi-Fi, just something to anticipate is that there may be delays. And so something to think about is creating asynchronous type assignments so that your students can get something emailed, put something in the course management system, if you have a course management system, so that they can at least continue learning and engage with you until they figure out technology details.
And then Virginia, you've been an online professor for quite a long time. One of the things that always seems to be an issue is assessment and helping people figure out whether people have obtained the knowledge and skills. Do you just want to share a little bit about that? And I know we can go in lots of different tangents, but I think that might be helpful for people. You know, how do we really get it so that it's interesting to the students, that they actually learn something and that they can share that they learned that knowledge somehow?
Thanks for asking, Pete. So, you know, one thing to think about, I'm going to backtrack and then go forward. It seems like the biggest stressor for everybody here is doing hands-on learning. But I want to point out something that we as a group have done beautifully in the past 40 minutes. We figured out how to interact online with muting and unmuting and feedback and raising your hand and engaging with people and chatting. And so take comfort in that it takes time for things to gel. As far as having students learn, things to think about are, you have didactic courses, you have the online component, you have case-based learning because that's what clinic is, and setting up opportunities for students to do what's called interleaving, which is to learn and then walk away from it and come back and revisit it and really work in a problem-solving manner over the space of a week. That can be very, it can help to connect different pieces and different courses in a way that keeps the students thinking. So, you know, I think right now a lot of people are just throwing worksheets at students and read this chapter and listen to this lecture, and give them an opportunity to put pieces together. One of the programs that I used to teach in, we did micro lectures, very, very short, 10 to 20 minute lectures. 20 minutes was pretty long. And then had the students engage in case-based discussions and expected them to participate over the space of an entire week. And so we really did space everything out. And, that's certainly something you could do with case-based learning, having them write case studies, and then the idea is using the live interaction very judiciously so that it's short, kind of to the point, working on demonstrations and not overburdening all the Wi-Fi, because I do think that's the part that massage students really want. They want that face-to-face interaction, but the romantic notion that you're going to be online live with your students when you were in class otherwise, probably not going to happen. And so just be prepared for that. So I hope that helps.
Beautiful. That's great, Virginia. And as someone who's looking at doing a synchronous because of hours, this also would lead us to something called competencies again. We're going to have to start thinking out of the box for all kinds of things if this becomes a long-term story. Many of us are school owners or work at schools, and hopefully we'll be able to learn to teach differently. This is the turning point sometimes. We always talk about using technology in the classroom, but really teacher knowledge and interaction with the students can happen in so many different ways. I'm going to put it out again. I don't want to spend all your time today. We've got about 13 minutes or so to go on this. Is there anybody who has anything to share at the moment that they just have to press that button and share with us? And everyone who has shared, I'm very appreciative. Those of you who are online, I'm very appreciative. But I want to open the space here. It's a conversation, and if you have something to say, I want you to be able to do that.
Pete, I might add to Virginia's comments on that. You're lucky to get students engaged for 20 minutes on those meetings and keeping them short. One of the activities we're looking at doing is doing a wiki. So I think we all know what Wikipedia is, and you can do a wiki. It's an activity on Moodle, but you can also do that on Google Docs and maybe break your students up into small groups and have them work in pairs. Or it could even, depending on the size of your class, it could be a group project. We're looking at doing something like this for, we had 2 more massages in our case study class where our students were following a client through 8 sessions and writing a case report. And we had planned on moving up their assessment to this past Monday, and we were closed down, so we weren't able to do that. So we're going to have incomplete case reports. We're going to ask the students to probably call their client over the phone and do as much of the assessment as possible and still finish their write-up. But we'll go ahead and finish out the semester using Research Perch and some of the resources through the Massage Therapy Foundation on the research component. And I think we all know we have a lot of really great resources out there. It's just making the time to get organized and make those shifts onto that. The Research Perch broad podcasts are pretty, I think are pretty doable. It kind of follows Virginia's rule in 20 minutes. Most of their broadcasts are 20 minutes or less. And there's just a lot of different resources there, I think, that you'll find that will be real helpful.
Thank you, Susan. And I did put up the Massage Therapy Foundation website with all of the resources there.
Thank you.
Hi, I'd like to jump in and make a comment, ask a question. My name is Abby.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to say all the information that's come from this group and a couple of others has been so helpful to me, and I'm very, very appreciative of it. One piece of advice that I've picked up on is to really simplify things. Since last Sunday, when we had the first webinar, I did an immense amount of work, study, reading until I just had a meltdown and cried for a morning, and then just decided just to simplify things like I had been advised to do. So if you are in that mode, I suggest you get there quicker rather than later like I did. But I have a practical question for the group. We did a test run Friday, maybe Thursday or Friday, with my class, and this is a small class. There are 12 of us, and the students weren't taking it seriously. One woman was driving down the highway 70 miles an hour with her phone propped up on her dashboard while we were doing video conferencing on Zoom. When she got home, she started to.
Shush, I'm listening.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Okay, and
Go ahead.
my question in short is, I've been trying to write a list of etiquette rules, so to speak, to get students to be present, pay attention, to not go unload their dishwasher, go to the restroom, things like that. Do any of you have any advice on what works and what doesn't work with that for just the practical part, holding their attention for the time that we're scheduled for a meeting? And I'll unmute myself.
Beautiful. So one of the things that I'm going to be doing is doing short sections again and using Zoom break rooms. I think that's a nice way for students to have variety. I will also set some ground rules, very much like what we're doing here, but as we get to know each other, we'll have a little more free form, kind of like what Tracy was talking about. And there seems to be maybe some other responses, so I'll just let someone unmute themselves if they wanted to address your question, Abby.
I'm seeing nothing in the chat. So Virginia again, and we're getting a little close on time. One thing, there are many, I would just say, it's awful. Just search online for some prefabricated internet education etiquette, and you will find probably 50 different resources. Pick the one that makes the most sense. I've generally, my adjuncts in the past would always create their own and post it in the course so that students would know what was expected of them, not unlike the little ground rules thing I threw up on the slide here for today. But something to think about is if your students are grown-ups and they have responsibilities for not only work, but family and otherwise, again, the idea that getting them all on the same page at the same time they would have driven to class and been there in your classroom, it just might not happen. And so if it doesn't happen, just taking a temperature and rolling with it in the first week or so to figure out how you can adapt your expectations. I mean, obviously we all have attendance policies for things, and when that just doesn't fly, that's going to create conflict. And I think that stressors that everybody are going to have over the next 2 weeks are going to be different than the stressors you had over the last week. So, sorry to hear that people melted down, but that's kind of happening everywhere. It's an unusual situation.
Great. Anyone else? We've got about 6 minutes, so I wanted to also check in about one last thing. So please come on, Jeanette.
Great. I just wanted to make one comment. Hopefully I can make it quickly. We're entering a new world, as everybody keeps saying, but one of the things that we can also do is take a look at all of the scrambling that we're doing for online. This is actually going to make us better instructors, better teachers in front of our students. If we have to make everything shorter for online, we can do that in class, and then we can incorporate a little bit more relevancy and a little bit more formative assessment and make our classes even that much better. If I'm getting anything out of this at all, that's the big thing I'm getting out of it. I'm going to be a better instructor when this is over.
Beautiful, beautiful. Anyone else?
Yeah, hi, Pete. Oh, sorry, I'll
Go
stop.
ahead, Arlene.
I just wanted to say some people put some stuff in the chat, and if that was Ian, he's gonna have something to say, but Elena put something called Human Online, and that's the link. It's Human Online, and it looks like a mindfulness practice to start classes. And Sherry Aldrich shared a link on YouTube. Those are in the chat. You guys can take a look at them. That's to show you how to do Zoom break room because people had questions about that. And I had something else, but I've forgotten, so I'll go now.
Okay, and Ian, why don't you come on?
All right, great. I just wanted to give an idea of what you can do in the next week as far as keeping your students engaged in body work, just because it might be hard to kind of scramble and figure something out. I have some ideas for things that don't need partners at all. So you don't need a partner as a teacher, your students don't need a partner. And that would be self-massage and self-palpation. So if you can take them through how to follow their collarbone and find their coracoid process, and then talk about the coracobrachialis, how to palpate that. If you can take them through how to do work on their own jaw, work on their own shoulder, that can be pretty invaluable. And it can be fun. It can be something for this next week that might carry them through. And also movement demos. So if you've got someone who knows Tai Chi, that would be great for this next week. That's all I got. Thank you.
Awesome. So I think we're getting close to time here. So I want to see in the chat box maybe if you'd like to do this again. I'm thinking that the next couple of weeks will be important for us to be together as teachers. So I want to do this and commit to doing this. And I think 3 o'clock on a Sunday seems like we've gotten a pretty good crowd. So if you think that looks good, and it looks like many of you are saying yes, plan on hearing from us again soon about having another one of these. I think that Virginia and myself and Robin Anderson and Arlene will be available to do some of this, but I also want to have more specific topics as we go. But I think just talking to each other can be very good. And I know that Sundays aren't always a good day for people, so I want to also be open to other days that might be available. So I'm seeing the chat box doing that. So there's also a survey. Is that right, Virginia? I want you to chime in here. We've got a survey.
Sure. So a couple things, and one is that the link to last week's session, which was much more presentation focused, the email included a link to a survey. But I think we're getting a general temperature of what kinds of resources you need. So I'm going to take my little post-it note here and say that the big questions that came out of today were ideas for hands-on work. That's a big question for everybody. Another is assessment ideas. We kind of got to that at the end. But another thing I would encourage you to think about is policies, because for some of you, I know Don Hogue covered some of this in last week's webinar, but where you're unaware what the policies are for hands-on work or synchronous work or otherwise, that's something that we probably should talk about. As far as the Sunday time, just, we're trying to get a time where it's a static time where we're all going to be here and accommodate people on the West Coast. Not doing so well with Hawaii because they're very far behind us in time. But this has been taped, and we hope that this will be available on the Alliance's website so that, folks can go there and download this chat and listen to it. But so that's what I've got. The last thing, I guess, is that if you're interested in being more of a discussant, which is what Susan and Rob and Pete were today, you can reach me. I'll forward your information on to Pete, but it's virginia@afmte.org. And there's 3 I's in Virginia, not just 2. So if you want to shoot me an email and say you've got something that you'd really like to share, then maybe we can kind of incorporate you in kind of our next week's thing.
Awesome. And so it is 4 o'clock, and I want to respect all of your time. I'm honored that you've chosen to spend an hour with us, and I want to do it again. So if there's anything that anyone has to say before we finish, please do that. And then I'm going to spend about a minute with some downtime and then stop the recording. So if anyone has anything to say it now. If you want me to unmute everybody and I'll say goodbye to each other, we can do that as well.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you for everyone's time.
Yeah, everyone's
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Thank
Stay
you very
safe.
much.
Great.
Thanks much to everybody.
Take care.
Love y'all.
Wait, I don't get this.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
24. Good job.
Thank you. Hi, Sue Bebick. Hi, Sue Bebick.
Hi, Pete.
24 divided by what equals 6?
Hi, Tracy Walton.
I love it.
What's 24 divided by?
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, every person who was on the call.
Anything I can do to help Pete, you just let me know.
Okay, thank you. All right, I am going to stop this recording.